History is often painted in broad strokes, highlighting the triumphs and achievements of civilizations while glossing over the darker, more uncomfortable truths.
Without that grain coming in, they couldn't hold on to power.
In this video, we're diving deep into the shadows to uncover 20 horrible historical facts that school doesn't teach.
Napoleon's a great battlefield leader. He's a great military leader in the narrow sense.
From the Little Ice Age's impact on European history to the Siege of Leningrad, these events have shaped our world in ways that textbooks often ignore.
Biggest misconception about George Washington is that he had wooden teeth.
Join us as we explore the hidden narratives and forgotten stories that reveal the complexities of our past. Number 20. Little Ice Age's impact on Europe history. Be prepared for a challenge to your knowledge of European history because the Little Ice Age profoundly altered the continent's history in ways that traditional education frequently ignores. From the 14th to the 19th centuries, Europe shivered through a climate crisis that shaped the course of nations and left an indelible mark on culture. Rivers and canals freezing solid, allowing armies to march across them, is exactly what happened in 1658, when Swedish troops crossed the frozen Great Belt to launch a surprise attack on Denmark. As growing seasons shrank, crop failures became the norm. Famine stalked the land, driving food prices through the roof. In desperation, people turned to new crops like potatoes, forever changing European cuisine. The Dutch, ever resourceful, capitalized on the colder climate by becoming masters of ice skating and developing new shipbuilding techniques to navigate icy waters. But not all adaptations were positive. The Little Ice Age fueled a wave of superstition and paranoia. Witch hunts surged as people sought scapegoats for their misfortunes. Between 1560 and 1660 alone, an estimated 50,000 alleged witches met grisly fates across Europe. Perhaps most importantly, the Little Ice Age sparked scientific curiosity. Early meteorologists began keeping detailed weather records, laying the groundwork for modern climate science. It's a chilling reminder that climate change, whether warming or cooling, has the power to reshape societies in profound and unexpected ways. Number 19. Washington's troublesome teeth. George Washington, the revered first president of the United States, faced a lifelong battle that history books often gloss over: his severe dental problems. From his early 20s until his death in 1799, Washington's teeth were a source of constant pain and embarrassment, shaping his demeanor and interactions in profound ways. Washington's dental woes began with the loss of his first tooth at age 24. Despite meticulous care, including the use of toothbrushes, tooth powders, and mouthwash, his teeth continued to deteriorate. By the time he took office as president in 1789, Washington had only one natural tooth left. The rest had been replaced by a series of ill-fitting dentures made from a mix of human and animal teeth, ivory, and various metals. These dentures were far from the wooden tooth myth that persists today. They were bulky, uncomfortable, and often caused infections and severe pain. Washington's letters reveal his constant struggle to find relief, frequently corresponding with dentists to adjust or replace his dentures. One set, made by dentist John Greenwood, even included a tooth Washington had saved from an earlier extraction. The impact of these dental issues on Washington's life was significant. His dentures affected his appearance, giving his face a swollen look and making it difficult for him to speak clearly. Historian Ron Chernow notes that Washington's dental pain was a reason for his famously brief second inaugural address, which consisted of just 135 words. Number 18. The Great Emu War of Australia. In 1932, Australia faced an enemy unlike any other, an army of 20,000 emus. The Great Emu War was a real military operation that pitted man against bird in a conflict. Visualize this. World War I. Veterans turned farmers in Western Australia were struggling to make ends meet during the Great Depression. As if things weren't tough enough, a massive flock of emus decided their wheat fields looked like an all-you-can-eat buffet. These 6-foot-tall feathered menaces were destroying crops and punching holes in rabbit-proof fences, allowing other pests to join the feast. Desperate times called for desperate measures. The farmers appealed to the government, which responded by sending in the big guns. Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery arrived with 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. But the emus had other plans. These crafty birds proved to be masters of guerrilla warfare, scattering at the first sign of danger and using the terrain to their advantage. One soldier described their ability to absorb bullets as like emu-shaped sponges. Even when hit, they often managed to flee, leaving the frustrated soldiers in their dust. After a month of embarrassing skirmishes, including a machine gun jamming at a crucial moment, the military withdrew in defeat. About 1,000 emus were killed, 2,500 rounds of ammunition were expended, and Australia's dignity was in tatters. Number 17. The Dancing Plague of 1518. One of the most strange and deadly events in history took place in Strasbourg streets during the summer of 1518. The Dancing Plague. It all began with a single woman, Frau Trophaea, who inexplicably started dancing in the streets. Frau Trophaea danced for nearly a week, unable to stop even for food or rest. Within days, dozens of others joined her, all seemingly possessed by the same uncontrollable urge to dance. By the end of the month, the number of afflicted had swelled to around 400. The dancers moved frenetically, their bodies convulsing and their feet bleeding until many collapsed from exhaustion, heart attacks, or strokes. City authorities, baffled and desperate, tried various remedies. They even constructed a stage and hired musicians, believing that the dancers needed to dance the fever out of their systems. This strategy backfired spectacularly, as it only encouraged more people to join the frenzied dance. Some reports claim that up to 15 people per day were dying at the height of the plague. The exact cause of the dancing plague remains a mystery. Some historians suggest ergot poisoning caused by a fungus found in rye bread, which can produce hallucinations and convulsions. However, ergot poisoning typically doesn't provide the stamina needed to dance for days on end. More widely accepted is the theory of mass psychogenic illness, a form of mass hysteria triggered by extreme stress. In 1518, Strasbourg was reeling from a series of hardships, including famine, disease, and political instability. The collective anxiety and belief in divine retribution may have manifested in this uncontrollable dancing. In time, the dancing plague mysteriously faded away just as it had appeared. The worst affected were taken to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers, where they reportedly found relief. The event has since become a fascinating case study in the complexities of human behavior and the power of psychological contagion. Number 16. The not-so-glamorous life of pirates. Do you think being a pirate is all about buried treasure and swashbuckling adventures? The real life of a pirate was far from the Hollywood glamour we've come to expect. Pirates were crammed into tight, stinking quarters where disease spread faster than you could say, "Shiver me timbers." Scurvy, dysentery, and all manner of nasty ailments were constant companions on these floating petri dishes. The work was backbreaking and dangerous. Climbing, rigging in stormy seas, hauling heavy cargo, and engaging in bloody battles were all in a day's work. And don't forget the constant threat of being caught and executed. While pirates did have a democratic structure on their ships, with captains often being elected, this wasn't exactly a utopia. Conflicts were common, and punishments for breaking the pirate code were brutal. Marooning, keel hauling, or even walking the plank weren't just fictional threats. Most pirates came from desperate circumstances: former slaves, unemployed sailors, or criminals seeking a way out. The promise of riches often proved hollow, with most loot quickly squandered on drinks and gambling in port. And those epic sea battles? More often than not, they were quick, brutal affairs aimed at intimidating merchant ships into surrendering without a fight. The golden age of piracy was short-lived, lasting only a few decades before increased naval patrols and stricter laws brought it to a crashing halt. Many pirates met inglorious ends: hanged, imprisoned, or dying from disease or injury far from home. Number 15. The inception and suppression of the Gregorian calendar. When you flip your calendar to a new month, you probably don't think about the centuries of controversy behind it. The Gregorian calendar, which we use today, was introduced by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582 to correct inaccuracies in the Julian calendar. By the 16th century, this drift had pushed the calendar out of sync with the equinoxes, which was crucial for determining the date of Easter. To fix this, the Gregorian reform shortened the calendar year by 0.0075 days and adjusted leap year rules. Years divisible by 100 would not be leap years unless they were also divisible by 400. Additionally, 10 days were skipped to realign the calendar. October 4th, 1582 was followed by October 15th, 1582. However, the reform wasn't universally welcomed. Catholic countries like Italy, Spain, and Portugal adopted it almost immediately, but Protestant and Orthodox nations were suspicious. They saw the new calendar as a papal plot. England, for instance, didn't switch until 1752, leading to the famous "Give us our 11 days" protests. Sweden's transition was even more chaotic, involving a failed gradual shift that led to the creation of the unique date, February 30th, 1712. Despite the resistance, the Gregorian calendar's accuracy eventually won out. Its adoption spread through colonial expansion and scientific necessity. By the early 20th century, it had become the global standard, used for both secular and many religious purposes. Number 14. Napoleon Bonaparte. Height misconception. Hold on to your bicorn hats, folks, because we're about to debunk one of history's most persistent myths. Contrary to popular belief, Napoleon wasn't the pint-sized powerhouse we've been led to believe. In fact, at around 5 feet 7 inches tall, he was actually of average height for a Frenchman of his time. So how did this towering historical figure get cut down to size in our collective imagination? It all started with a classic case of measurement mayhem. Napoleon's height was recorded as 5 feet 2 inches in French feet, which were longer than British feet. When this measurement crossed the channel, nobody bothered to do the conversion, and voila. But the British didn't stop there. They launched a full-scale propaganda campaign, depicting Napoleon as a tiny tyrant throwing temper tantrums. These caricatures, particularly those by the satirist James Gillray, spread like wildfire and stuck in the public consciousness. Adding to the illusion, Napoleon was often surrounded by his imperial guard, who were required to be above average height. The short Napoleon myth has had a long-lasting impact. It even spawned the term Napoleon complex to describe aggressive behavior in short men. But here's the kicker. Napoleon himself was deeply bothered by these portrayals. He reportedly said that British cartoonist James Gillray did more than all the armies of Europe to bring me down. So next time someone mentions Napoleon's height, you can set the record straight. He wasn't a short man. He was a man of average height with an outsized legacy. It just goes to show that when it comes to history, sometimes the biggest myths come in small packages. Number 13. The hidden heritage of Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore. Those colossal presidential faces carved into the Black Hills of South Dakota aren't just a tourist attraction, they're a monument steeped in controversy and hidden history. Before it became America's shrine of democracy, the Lakota Sioux called this sacred ground the Six Grandfathers. The Black Hills were promised to the Sioux in perpetuity by the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. But when gold was discovered there in 1874, the U.S. government quickly reneged on its promise, forcibly relocating the Sioux to smaller reservations. Fast forward to 1927, when sculptor Gutzon Borglum began blasting the mountain into presidential portraits. Borglum, it turns out, had ties to the Ku Klux Klan, adding another layer of controversy to the project. But here's a lesser-known fact. Borglum had grander plans than just faces. He envisioned a massive hall of records hidden behind the president's heads. This secret chamber, accessible by an 800-foot granite staircase, was meant to house important American documents and artifacts. While Borglum's full vision never materialized, a scaled-down version was completed in 1998. Today, a titanium vault containing historical panels lies sealed behind a 1,200-pound granite capstone near the carved faces. Mount Rushmore's creation displaced not just people, but entire ecosystems. The dynamite blasts and construction devastated local wildlife habitats, a fact often overlooked in the monument's history. The site remains a flashpoint for indigenous rights. In 1970, Native American activists occupied the monument, demanding the return of the Black Hills. The struggle continues today, with many Lakota refusing a 1980 Supreme Court settlement in favor of reclaiming their ancestral lands. Number 12. The original purpose of the Great Wall of China. Forget what you've heard about the Great Wall of China being built to keep out Mongol invaders. That's only part of the story. This massive structure, stretching over 13,000 miles, was a multifaceted marvel with purposes far beyond simple defense. Let's rewind to the 7th century BC. Chinese rulers weren't just worried about barbarians at the gates, they were playing a complex game of geopolitical chess. The wall served as a physical manifestation of imperial power, a way to say this is where China begins and this is where it ends. It was as much about keeping people in as it was about keeping others out. But wait, there's more. The wall wasn't just a barrier, it was an ancient superhighway. Along its length, a sophisticated network of watchtowers and beacon towers formed an early warning system that would make modern military strategists green with envy. These towers could relay messages across vast distances in hours, using smoke signals by day and fire by night. Here's a mind-bender. The wall actually facilitated trade while controlling it. Sections of the wall ran parallel to the famous Silk Road, allowing China to monitor and tax the flow of goods. It was like an ancient customs checkpoint stretching thousands of miles. In a land of diverse cultures and languages, the wall became a unifying project, a shared endeavor that helped forge a Chinese identity. Number 11. The misunderstood role of Vikings. The Norse seafarers, known as Vikings, were much more than just raiders wearing horned helmets. The real Vikings were a complex people who made a lasting impact on world history, despite the Hollywood portrayal of them as one-dimensional barbarians. Sure, raiding was part of their repertoire, but it was just one facet of Viking culture. These guys were the ultimate multitaskers of the Middle Ages. They were savvy traders who established bustling commercial networks stretching from Baghdad to Newfoundland. Their merchant ships sailed the Silk Road of the North, swapping fur and amber for silver and spices. Vikings were also intrepid explorers who made Columbus look like a landlubber. They reached North America a cool 500 years before the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria set sail. Leif Erikson and his crew established settlements in present-day Newfoundland, proving the Vikings were the original American dreamers. Not only were the Vikings master assimilators, but they were also conquerors. They settled and integrated into societies across Europe, from Ireland to Russia. The Normans conquered England in 1066, descendants of Viking settlers in France. Vikings were also innovators. They developed advanced shipbuilding techniques, created intricate art, and even established the world's oldest parliament in Iceland. So next time you hear Viking, don't just think of longships and looting. Think of skilled navigators, cunning traders, and daring explorers who shaped the course of European history. Number 10. The history of ketchup. Ketchup, the beloved condiment found in nearly every American kitchen, has a history that's anything but ordinary. It all started in Southeast Asia, where a fermented fish sauce known as keycap was a staple. This early version, dark and savory, bore little resemblance to the tomato-based sauce we know today. British sailors encountered keycap in the 17th century and brought it back to Europe. There, it underwent numerous transformations. Early European recipes included ingredients like mushrooms, walnuts, and even oysters. These versions were far from the bright red ketchup we're familiar with, often appearing as brown, savory sauces. The pivotal shift to tomato ketchup began in the early 19th century. In 1812, James Mees, a Philadelphia scientist, published the first known recipe for tomato ketchup. His concoction included tomato pulp, spices, and brandy. This was a significant departure from fish-based origins and set the stage for the ketchup revolution. Enter Henry J. Heinz in the late 19th century. Heinz's innovation was to use ripe tomatoes, which are high in pectin, a natural preservative. This allowed him to eliminate the need for chemical preservatives like sodium benzoate, which had been a staple in earlier recipes. Heinz also added more vinegar and sugar, giving ketchup its distinctive sweet and tangy flavor. By 1876, Heinz's ketchup was a hit, and it quickly became a staple in American households. The 20th century saw ketchup cement its place in American cuisine, particularly with the rise of fast food. Its versatility made it a perfect companion for everything from French fries to hamburgers. Number 9. The Library of Alexandria and the Loss of Knowledge. Picture the ultimate library. Not your local bookstore, but a colossal hub of knowledge that would make even the most ambitious tech moguls jealous. That was the Library of Alexandria, the ancient world's Google before Google existed. Founded in the 3rd century BC, this intellectual powerhouse wasn't just a building full of dusty scrolls, it was a beacon of learning that drew the brightest minds from across the known world. This treasure trove of wisdom didn't just fade away. It met a series of tragic ends that would make a Hollywood disaster movie look tame. The first blow came in 48 BC when Julius Caesar, caught up in a civil war, accidentally torched part of the city, including some of the library. But the library was resilient. It bounced back only to face more threats. Over the next few centuries, it weathered storms of political unrest, religious zealotry, and even natural disasters. Each incident chipped away at its vast collection. The final chapter in this saga of destruction is shrouded in mystery. Some point to the Arab conquest in 642 AD as the library's death knell, but historians debate this claim. What's certain is that by the time the dust settled, the greatest repository of ancient knowledge was gone. The loss of the Library of Alexandria isn't just about missing out on some cool old books, it's about the erasure of entire branches of knowledge, scientific discoveries, and cultural insights that will never recover. It's a stark reminder of how fragile our collective wisdom can be and why preserving knowledge is crucial for human progress. Number 8. The history of ancient Roman plumbing. Magnificent colosseums and heroic battles may come to mind when you think of ancient Rome, but one of their most remarkable inventions, their sophisticated plumbing system, is usually overlooked. Modern water management was first introduced by Roman plumbing, an engineering marvel that was far from the crude systems of other ancient civilizations. Starting in the 7th century BC, the Romans began constructing a network of aqueducts, lead pipes, and sewers that would revolutionize urban living. The aqueducts, some of which took over 500 years to complete, transported fresh water from distant sources into the heart of the city. These structures use gravity and the natural slope of the land to move water efficiently, a technique still admired today. One of the most famous components of this system was the Cloaca Maxima, or Great Sewer, built in the 6th century BC. Initially designed to drain swampy areas and manage stormwater, it was later adapted to carry waste from public baths and latrines, significantly improving urban sanitation. But the Romans didn't stop at public infrastructure. They also brought running water into private homes, especially those of the wealthy, using lead pipes. This innovation, while groundbreaking, came with a dark side. The lead in the pipes could leach into the water, posing serious health risks like lead poisoning. Some historians even speculate that widespread lead exposure contributed to the decline of the Roman Empire. Despite these issues, the Roman plumbing system was a monumental leap forward. It provided clean water and effective waste management, which were crucial for the health and growth of the city. Public baths and fountains became social hubs, showcasing the Romans' appreciation for water's practical and recreational uses. Number 7. The accidental invention of the microwave. Ever wondered how that magical box in your kitchen came to be? The microwave oven, a staple in over 90% of American homes, owes its existence to a melted candy bar and one curious engineer. In 1945, Raytheon engineer Percy Spencer was tinkering with radar technology when he made a sticky discovery. While working with a magnetron, Spencer noticed the peanut cluster bar in his pocket had turned into a gooey mess. This wasn't just a laundry mishap, it was the spark of a culinary revolution. Spencer, a self-taught genius who never finished grammar school, immediately saw the potential. He began experimenting, pointing microwaves at various foods in a metal box. Popcorn kernels danced and popped, and an egg even exploded in a colleague's face during one memorable test. Within a year, Spencer had filed a patent for his method of treating foodstuffs. His invention promised to cook food with unprecedented speed and efficiency. The first commercial microwave, the Raider Range, hit the market in 1947. At 750 pounds and $5,000, it was hardly kitchen-friendly. It wasn't until 1967 that the first countertop model appeared, priced at a more reasonable $495. Spencer's accidental discovery didn't just change how we heat leftovers, it revolutionized food preparation, spawned new culinary trends, and even influenced the design of kitchens. Number 6. Cleopatra's true roots. The final pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra VII, is frequently surrounded by rumors and false information, especially when it comes to her lineage. Contrary to popular belief, Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian by blood, but was of Macedonian Greek origin. Her lineage traces back to Ptolemy Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals who established the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt after Alexander's death. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC in Alexandria, a city founded by Alexander the Great and a melting pot of cultures. Despite her Greek heritage, Cleopatra was unique among the Ptolemaic rulers for embracing Egyptian culture. She learned the Egyptian language, adopted traditional Egyptian dress, and even portrayed herself as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis. This cultural assimilation was a strategic move to solidify her rule and connect with her subjects. Her father, Ptolemy XII, also known as Auletes, played a significant role in her rise to power. Cleopatra's reign was marked by her strategic alliances with powerful Roman figures like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. These relationships were not just romantic but also political, aimed at securing her throne and Egypt's independence in a time of Roman expansion. The mystery surrounding Cleopatra's maternal lineage adds another layer to her story. While her father's ancestry is well documented, the identity of her mother and paternal grandmother remains uncertain. Some historians speculate that Cleopatra may have had some Egyptian blood, but this is not definitively proven. Cleopatra's life and reign marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the beginning of Roman control over Egypt. Her legacy is a blend of Greek and Egyptian elements reflecting the complex cultural and political landscape of her time. Despite the controversies and myths, Cleopatra remains a significant historical figure, embodying the fusion of cultures and the intricate dynamics of power in the ancient world. Number 5. The unexpected origins of the English language. Ever wonder why English is such a weird mishmash of rules and exceptions? Buckle up, because the story of how English came to be is wilder than a drunken Shakespeare writing fan fiction. It all kicked off in the 5th century when a bunch of Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, decided Britain looked like prime real estate. These invaders brought their languages with them, laying the foundation for what would become Old English. But this wasn't your grandma's English, it was more like the linguistic equivalent of a Viking metal band. Fast forward to 1066, and the Normans crash the party. William the Conqueror struts in, bringing a healthy dose of French flair. Suddenly, the peasants are speaking Old English while the nobles are parlez-vous-ing in French. This linguistic tug-of-war gave birth to Middle English, a tongue that would make Chaucer proud and modern readers scratch their heads. The Renaissance hits, and suddenly everyone's obsessed with Latin and Greek. Scholars start borrowing words faster than a college student with their roommate's Netflix account. This word shopping spree ushers in early modern English, the language of Shakespeare and his to-be or not-to-be shenanigans. Then comes the British Empire, spreading English across the globe like linguistic peanut butter. From India to the Caribbean, English picks up words like a rolling Katamari of languages. And let's not forget America's contribution. We took English, threw out some U's, changed football to mean a completely different sport, and invented words like okay and cool. Number 4. Christopher Columbus's geographical misunderstanding. The guy who sailed the ocean blue in 1492, Christopher Columbus, was not only off course but also insanely ignorant of geography. Due to an epic math error, this Italian explorer's expedition altered the course of history. Columbus had a wild idea. He could reach the fabled riches of Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic. There was just one tiny problem. He thought the Earth was way smaller than it actually is. He estimated the distance from the Canary Islands to Japan at about 2,400 miles. In reality, it's over 12,000 miles. Armed with this flawed logic and a bunch of outdated maps, Columbus set sail, convinced he'd found a shortcut to the East Indies. Instead, he bumped into the Caribbean thinking he'd reached islands off the coast of Asia. He even called the native Taino people Indians, a misnomer that stuck for centuries. Columbus went to his grave believing he'd reached Asia. He made 4 voyages to the New World, never realizing he'd stumbled upon an entirely unknown continent to Europeans. This geographical goof-up had massive consequences. It kick-started the age of exploration, leading to widespread colonization and, tragically, the exploitation of indigenous peoples. Columbus's voyages also highlighted just how little Europeans knew about world geography, spurring advancements in cartography and navigation. Number 3. Benjamin Franklin's love for the turkey. One of the most colorful founding fathers of the United States, Benjamin Franklin, had an unexpected and amusing opinion regarding the national symbol. While the bald eagle proudly graces the Great Seal today, Franklin had a soft spot for a different bird, the turkey. In a letter to his daughter in 1784, Franklin famously criticized the bald eagle, calling it a bird of bad moral character. He pointed out that the eagle was a scavenger, often stealing food from other birds, and described it as lazy and cowardly. In contrast, Franklin praised the turkey as a much more respectable bird, native to North America and embodying qualities he admired, such as courage and resourcefulness. Franklin's admiration for the turkey wasn't entirely serious. He never formally proposed the turkey as the national symbol. His comments were part of a satirical critique of the Society of the Cincinnati, a hereditary organization of Revolutionary War officers. Franklin lampooned society's use of the eagle, suggesting that the bird looked more like a turkey in their emblem. Despite his jest, Franklin's words have endured, sparking a myth that he lobbied for the turkey to replace the bald eagle. This myth gained traction over the years, especially after a 1962 New Yorker cover depicted the Great Seal with a turkey instead of an eagle. Franklin's humorous critique highlights his characteristic wit and offers a glimpse into his values. He saw the turkey as a symbol of self-reliance and hard work, qualities he believed were essential to the American spirit. While the bald eagle ultimately became the national symbol, Franklin's playful advocacy for the turkey adds a unique chapter to the story of America's founding. Number 2. The misinterpretation of the Statue of Liberty. Most likely, the Statue of Liberty conjures up images of a welcoming icon for newcomers to the United States. But did you know that this iconic monument was originally intended to celebrate something quite different? The Statue of Liberty, gifted by France and dedicated in 1886, was conceived by Edouard René de La Boulaye and designed by Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi. Its purpose was to commemorate the abolition of slavery and the centennial of American independence. La Boulaye, a French historian and abolitionist, envisioned the statue as a symbol of freedom, democracy, and the triumph over oppression. The statue itself is rich with symbolism. The broken chains at Lady Liberty's feet represent the end of slavery, a powerful statement in the aftermath of the American Civil War. She holds a torch high, symbolizing enlightenment and progress, while the tabula ansata in her left hand is inscribed with the date of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, July 4, 1776. However, over time, the statue's meaning evolved. In 1903, Emma Lazarus's poem, The New Colossus, was inscribed on a plaque at the statue's base, forever linking Lady Liberty with the theme of immigration. Lines like, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," transformed the statue into a beacon of hope for millions of immigrants arriving at Ellis Island. This shift in symbolism has led to a common misinterpretation of the statue's original intent. While it now stands as a global icon of welcome and opportunity, its roots lie in the celebration of universal liberty and the abolition of slavery. This evolution highlights how symbols can change meaning over time, reflecting the shifting values and narratives of society. Understanding the true origins of the Statue of Liberty enriches our appreciation of its multifaceted legacy. It serves as a reminder that the quest for freedom and justice is ongoing and that symbols can carry diverse and evolving meanings. Number 1. The Siege of Leningrad. A prosperous metropolis was transformed into a frozen hell on earth for 872 days during one of the bloodiest and longest-lasting urban battles in history, the Siege of Leningrad. When Hitler's forces encircled Leningrad in September 1941, they didn't just cut off a city, they sentenced 2.5 million people to a slow, agonizing struggle for survival. As German bombs rained down, Leningraders faced an even deadlier enemy, starvation. Food rations plummeted to just 125 grams of bread per day, barely enough to fill a small sandwich. People resorted to the unthinkable, eating wallpaper paste, boiled leather, and even rats to stay alive. In the winter of 1941 to 42, over 1 lakh people died each month from hunger and cold. Yet amid this horror, the human spirit proved indomitable. Leningraders held concerts in bomb shelters, maintained a zoo, and even managed to stage a football match in 1942. The city's factories kept churning out tanks and ammunition, with workers often too weak to walk home after their shifts. The road of life across frozen Lake Ladoga became a lifeline, bringing in precious supplies and evacuating civilians. But this treacherous ice highway was constantly under German fire, and thousands perished when their vehicles plunged through weak spots. By the time the Soviet forces finally broke the siege in January 1944, Leningrad had paid an unimaginable price. Over 1 million civilians had perished, more than the total U.S. and British military casualties of World War II combined. The city's population had been halved. The siege of Leningrad remains a testament to both the depths of human cruelty and the heights of human resilience. It's a stark reminder that in total war, civilians often bear the heaviest burden, and that even in the darkest times, the will to survive can overcome unimaginable odds. We are coming to an end here today. Thanks for watching, and for such top-listing videos, subscribe to our channel.